I'm going to have my child in a week, and I have nowhere to stay. And the widower farmer does the unthinkable. Mia was 26 years old and had a huge belly that could no longer find any comfortable position. She hadn't slept in a real bed for 3 days, and the baby growing inside her seemed to feel every bump in the dirt road she had walked that afternoon. She had stopped at the side of the road with her hands on her back, breathing deeply, trying to hold back a pain that came and went without warning. In the cloth bag she carried over her shoulder, she had 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, and a crumpled envelope with just over $50. All that was left after Tyler took his things and left without looking back. Tyler. The name still carried a different kind of weight now. It wasn't anger exactly. It was that feeling of having believed in something that never really existed. She had nowhere to go. Her mother was in a small town nearly 2 days away, and their latest contact had been through messages, short and cold. The only aunt she was close to had moved to another state. The apartment she shared with Tyler had the lease in his name, and when he left, the landlord didn't even wait a week before knocking on the door. Mia looked both ways down the dirt road and chose to walk toward what seemed to be a rural property off in the distance, because she saw a light on, and because her legs could no longer take it. That was how she came through the old wooden gate and walked to the chicken coop. It wasn't exactly a choice. It was the first thing with a roof she found before her legs gave out. She lowered herself with difficulty and sat on the straw, resting her back against the wooden wall of the chicken coop, holding her belly with both hands. The chickens scurried away clucking, then came back curious. She closed her eyes for a minute. Just a minute. When she opened them, there was a man standing at the entrance of the chicken coop, looking at her with an expression that wasn't exactly shock, but was close to it. He was older, wearing a worn straw hat and a work apron, with a short white beard and small eyes from a lifetime of looking into the sun. He leaned in a little, as if he needed a better angle to believe what he was seeing, a young woman with long brown hair, a simple dress, a big belly, alone among the chickens at the end of the day. "What are you doing in my chicken coop?" he said. It wasn't an angry voice. It was the voice of someone who didn't quite know what to feel. Mia looked up at him and said the only thing that was true. "I have nowhere to stay." Mr. Arthur Sullivan was 67 years old and had been living alone on that farm for 4 of those years, ever since Mrs. Martha, his wife of nearly 40 years, had left too quickly for him to prepare. The house had filled with a kind of silence that isn't peace. It's absence. His children lived far away. They called sometimes. They visited at Christmas when they could, which in practice meant 1 Christmas yes and 2 no. He had learned to talk to himself, to the chickens, to the old dog named Shadow, to the vegetable garden Martha had planted, and that he kept alive for a reason he himself couldn't quite explain. So when he went to gather the evening eggs and found that young woman sitting on the straw with a cloth bag in her lap and eyes full of an exhaustion he recognized, the kind of tiredness that isn't just physical. He stood for a long moment not knowing what to do. "How long until the baby comes?" he asked, still leaning in the doorway. "A week, more or less." He took a deep breath, looked at her, then at her belly, then at the cloth bag. He did a quick, silent calculation. "Come in," he said. "This isn't where you'll be staying." Mia followed him to the wooden brick house about 50 yards from the chicken coop. It was a simple house, with a wide porch, wooden windows painted green that needed a fresh coat, and a big kitchen table that seemed to have been made for a family that was no longer there. Mr. Arthur warmed up some soup left over from lunch and set it in front of her without asking if she wanted any. Then he stood by the stove, arms crossed, watching her eat. "Do you have anyone to call?" he asked. "I do, but I'm not going to call." He didn't ask why. He just made a sound with his mouth, the kind that isn't agreement or disagreement, only an acknowledgement that there are situations where calling someone would be more complicated than it seems. Mia ate all the soup. Then she held her hands around the glass and looked at him. "Do you live alone?" "I do." "And why are you helping me?" Mr. Arthur took off his hat and set it on the table. He ran a hand through his thin white hair and said, Because my Martha would have done the same, and I learned not to do the opposite of what she would do. That hung in the kitchen air for a long while. He fixed up the room at the back of the house, the room of his youngest daughter, Diane, who had been living in the big city for years. It had a single bed with a good mattress, a window looking out over the vegetable garden, and a dresser with empty drawers. He put a clean towel on the bed and said the bathroom was the second door down the hallway. Mia thanked him without being able to look him in the eye. She was ashamed, and shame is a complicated thing to carry when your belly is huge and you're in the room of someone who knows nothing about your life. That night she slept in a way she hadn't slept in weeks. The baby stayed quiet, as if it needed rest too. The next morning Mr. Arthur was in the kitchen when she woke up. There was brewed coffee, warm biscuits heated on the griddle, and a glass of milk that he said was from my own cow. There's nothing better for someone who's expecting. Mia sat at the table and noticed he had already gone out to work before she woke up and come back. There was straw on his shoes. "You're an early riser," she said. "Always have been. Animals don't wait for the sun to come up to be hungry." She wanted to help with something. He said she wasn't going to do anything that would tire her out. She insisted, and he gave in. He let her sort beans while sitting down. It was that morning they truly started to talk. She told him, not everything, but enough. Tyler had shown up in her life at a time when she was alone in the big city, far from home, working at a small grocery store and trying to save money to keep studying. He had been kind at first, the kind that seems like the answer to a question you hadn't even asked yet. When she got pregnant, he spent 2 months pretending he was happy, then gradually went cold until one day he just never came back. Mr. Arthur heard all of it while sorting eggs into a basket, his back to her. When she finished, he stayed quiet for a while. Then he said, "A man who abandons his child doesn't even deserve the anger of the one who stays." She agreed with a gesture. "And your family?" he asked. Mia looked at the beans. "My mother is a good person, but she has her own problems. She separated from her second husband not long ago and is trying to get back on her feet. I don't want to be another burden." "You wouldn't be a burden." "I know I wouldn't be one, really. But it would seem that way. To her and to me, and sometimes what seems to be does as much damage as what actually is." That answer he hadn't expected. He looked at her in a different way. The days went by. 3, 4, 5. Mia would wake up early, have coffee with Mr. Arthur, help with whatever he let her do, and sit on the porch in the afternoon watching him work. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they'd stay silent for a whole hour without it feeling strange. But what seemed calm on the outside was getting complicated on the inside. On the 4th day, a visitor arrived. Mr. Arthur's youngest daughter, Diane, called to say she was coming to spend the weekend. She was 42, married, and had the air of someone who'd always thought her father needed watching ever since he became a widower. She arrived with her husband Gary in a big car, and when she saw Mia on the porch, she stopped in the middle of the stone path and stared. "Dad, who is that girl?" Mr. Arthur said, as calm as could be. "She's a guest. She's in Diane's room for now." Diane's face did something complicated. She waited for her father to go inside before speaking to Mia. "How long have you been here?" 5 days, Mia answered, without getting up. The baby was heavy, and the porch rocking chair was the only comfortable place in the world. "Where are you from?" Mia told her enough. Diane listened with that expression that tries to look neutral but isn't. That night, in the kitchen, Diane and her father had a conversation that Mia overheard from the hallway. "Dad, you can't just pick up people off the road like this." "I didn't pick her up off the road." "From the chicken coop, then. It's the same thing." "It's not the same thing, Diane. What if she's taking advantage? What if she runs off with something?" "With what?" "With the chicken eggs." There was a pause. "That's not how it works, Dad. You can't just—" "I can. It's my house." Silence. "Your mother would have done the same." "My mother is another story." "No, it isn't. It's exactly the same story." Mia went back to the room without making a sound. She lay on her side with her hand on her belly, feeling the baby move, and thought that maybe staying had been a mistake. That maybe she needed to leave before causing too much trouble in the life of a man who had his own problems. But when she pictured herself getting up, grabbing her cloth bag and walking out through that old wooden gate. The baby kicked hard, as if to say no. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Diane spent the whole weekend with that tense silence of someone who wants to say more than she's saying. Gary was easier, a quiet man who liked to drink sweet tea on the porch and didn't go out of his way to complicate things. On Sunday morning, Diane found Mia in the kitchen trying to wash the dishes from a position that didn't work very well with a belly as big as hers. "Get out of there," Diane said. It wasn't kind, but it wasn't hostile either. It was the tone of someone giving in begrudgingly. She washed the dishes without saying anything. Then she stood with her back to Mia for a while, and when she turned around, her face looked a little different. "Are you seeing a doctor?" "I was. It's been 3 weeks since I went." Diane made a sound with her mouth just like her father did. "On Monday, I'll take you to the county health clinic before I leave." Mia didn't say anything for a second. Then she said, "Thank you," in a voice that came out smaller than she wanted. On Monday, the nurse at the clinic confirmed what Mia already felt. The baby was positioned well, healthy, and could arrive at any moment, maybe in days, not a week. Diane heard this from outside the room, and when she came out, her expression had completely changed. "You're going to need someone when you go into labor." "I know. My father doesn't understand any of that." "I know. But I can't stay." Mia nodded. She already knew. Everyone has their own life. "Is there any woman nearby who can help? A neighbor, anyone?" Mia thought. During the days she was there, she had once seen a lady who came to bring some tomato seedlings to Mr. Arthur, a woman in her late 60s, short white hair, the firm manner of someone who had worked her whole life. "There's a neighbor who came by once. I don't know her name." Diane opened her phone. "I'll ask my dad." The neighbor's name was Mrs. Evelyn. She was 68 years old, had been a widow longer than Mr. Arthur, and lived about 500 meters away on a smaller property. When Mr. Arthur called explaining the situation, she said she would stop by that afternoon. Mrs. Evelyn arrived with a basket of eggs. She herself found it funny because the man didn't need eggs, and with a look that swept over Mia from head to toe in a fraction of a second. "Are you eating well?" she asked before anything else. "Now I am. Looks to me like the baby is big. The doctor said it's the right size. A doctor has never carried a child in their belly." She said this without any malice, almost with humor. Then she placed her hand on Mia's belly with a grandmother's familiarity and felt it for a few seconds. "But it's fine, it's fine." She stayed until nightfall. She talked with Mr. Arthur on the porch while Mia rested. When she left, she said she would come back the next day. And she did. Every day she came back. There are times when life fits things into place in a way you don't notice while it's happening. You're in the middle of a mess, everything seems loose, meaningless, and suddenly you look back and see that those pieces were coming together all along. I think about that every time I hear a story like this. It was a Tuesday morning when Mia woke up with a different kind of pain. It wasn't the kind of pain that went away. It was the kind that came, went, came back stronger, returned with even more force. She lay in bed for a while trying to count the intervals. Then she got up and went to the kitchen with her bare feet on the cold floor. Mr. Arthur was having coffee. He looked at her and knew right away. "Has it started?" "I think so." He stood up, picked up the phone, called Mrs. Evelyn, and said with the greatest calm in the world, "Evelyn, it's today." Mrs. Evelyn arrived in 20 minutes. She carried a bag and the manner of someone who had seen childbirth before, because she had 3 children and 2 grandchildren, not to mention the stories that country life accumulates. The 2 women stayed together, while Mr. Arthur remained in the kitchen boiling water that no one had asked for, but that he needed to do with his hands. The hours passed slowly. Mia held Mrs. Evelyn's hand more than once. The old woman didn't pull away. She stayed there steady, saying, "Go, go, you can do it, breathe," in that low voice that comes from someone who knows that some words work better when they are simple. During the interval between contractions, Mia asked, "Do you have children far away too?" "2, one at each end of the world." "Do you miss them?" "Every day." But I learned that missing someone isn't bad. It means that what you had was good. Mia didn't answer. She took a deep breath. The contraction returned. The baby was born at 3 p.m. on a sunny Tuesday in a farmhouse bedroom with a window open to the vegetable garden that a woman named Martha had planted and that a man named Arthur kept alive. It was a boy. Mia held him to her chest for a long time without being able to say anything. Mrs. Evelyn took care of what needed to be taken care of with efficiency and silence. Then she left the room and went to the kitchen, where Mr. Arthur was standing near the window. "It's a boy," she said. "They're both doing well." Mr. Arthur turned his back to her. He stayed like that for a few seconds. "Artie?" she said in a soft voice. "I'm fine," he replied. And he was. He just needed a moment for it all to settle. In the following days, that house that had become too small for two once again had the right kind of noise. The baby, whom Mia named Caleb, a name she had kept since she was a girl without knowing why, cried at the hours babies cry, and Mr. Arthur learned that there are worse things than being woken up at 3 a.m. Mrs. Evelyn showed up every day at first. Then she started spacing it out, but she always came. Sometimes she brought food. Sometimes she just stayed drinking coffee and watching Caleb sleep, with the expression of someone getting something for free. Diane called. Her tone had changed. There was still concern, but it was a different kind of concern. She called one afternoon specifically to ask if Mia needed anything, and when Mia said no, she was silent for a second and then said, "My dad is more animated than I've seen him in years." Mia looked out the kitchen window. Mr. Arthur was out there, in the vegetable garden, and he was humming something she couldn't identify. "I know," she said. But good things also carry the weight of the questions that weren't asked. It was an afternoon when Caleb was sleeping, and Mr. Arthur and Mia were sitting on the porch. The silence was comfortable, the kind that only settles in when people have passed the point of pretending. "How much longer are you staying?" he asked. Mia looked at her hands. "I need to find a way to move forward. I can't stay forever." "I didn't say you couldn't." "I know, but I need to have a plan." She turned to him. "You gave me a roof when I had nothing. You gave me food. Let your daughter help me," called Mrs. Evelyn. "I have no way to pay that back. I didn't ask you to pay it back." "I know," she breathed. "I was thinking, if you need someone to help around here, I know how to do things. I can cook. I can take care of a vegetable garden. I know administration. I did 2 years of a course before I stopped. It could be an exchange for now until I get on my feet." Mr. Arthur kept looking at the vegetable garden. "I thought of something," he said after a while. "Diane wants me to sell a piece of the property. She thinks it would be good for me. The problem is I don't know how to handle it on my own. The paperwork, talking to the people who need to be talked to, understanding what's written on paper. I can help with that. I know you can." He turned to her. "Here's the proposal. You stay in Diane's room until you find your way. In exchange, you help me with that and whatever else comes up. It's not a job with a salary, it's a trade, really. But the roof is certain and so is the food." Mia felt something in her chest that wasn't exactly relief, because relief is when the pressure goes away. It was something different. It was like when the pressure is still there, but you realize someone is by your side while it passes. "I accept," she said. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like, and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot who are just starting out. Now continuing. The months went by. Caleb grew up with the sound of the chickens as a soundtrack, and Mr. Arthur's calloused hands passing over his head every morning when he went off to work. Mia handled the land paperwork. It took longer than they expected, as these things usually do, but she went after every document with a persistence that surprised even herself. In the process, she discovered she had a way of organizing things, of understanding what was missing and going after it, that she never knew she had. Diane started coming by more often. Caleb had an effect similar to what babies have on people. It chips away at resistance without anyone noticing when it happened. On the third visit, she was on the living room floor playing with him as if that were the most natural place in the world. Mrs. Evelyn became such a constant presence that Shadow, the old dog, no longer barked when she came through the gate, and Mr. Arthur hummed more, not always and not loudly. But sometimes, from the garden, you could hear things from the porch. There came a moment about 5 months after Caleb was born when Mia decided to call her mother. It wasn't an easy decision. She held the phone in her hand for a while before dialing. Her mother answered on the 3rd ring, with that voice that carries the weight of things left unsaid for far too long. The conversation was difficult at first. There was hurt on both sides, the kind that builds up when people avoid the subject instead of resolving it. But Mia told her everything. Tyler, the street, the chicken coop, Mr. Arthur, Caleb, and her mother on the other end of the line grew quiet in a way that Mia recognized. It was the silence of someone trying not to cry. "Why didn't you call me when it happened?" her mother asked. Her voice changed. "Because I thought I'd be a burden." "You were never a burden, Mia." "I know, Mom. Now I know." I need to pause for a second here, because there's something in that phrase, "now I know," that weighs in a way that feels like everyone has felt it, from somewhere. How many conversations do we put off out of fear of seeming weak? How many mothers and daughters stay apart out of a pride that neither of them knows where it came from? They stayed on the phone for a long time. No one really solved anything on that call, but it was like opening a window in a closed room. The conversation that needed to happen was, finally, happening. Her mother said she wanted to come meet her grandson. Mia said she'd get the room ready for her. Mia's mother, Susan, arrived on a weekend with a suitcase and a tight smile, like someone who isn't sure how she'll be received. She was 53, with hair at chin length, and the walk of someone who had worked a lot and rested little. When she saw Caleb for the first time, she stood still in the kitchen doorway for about 3 seconds. Then she went to him with open arms. Mr. Arthur stayed on the porch during that scene, giving them space. But Mrs. Evelyn, who was there that day, went up to him and said in a low voice, "You did a good thing, Artie." "I didn't do anything," he said. "Yeah. Sometimes not doing anything is exactly what needed to be done." He looked at her sideways. "What does that mean?" "It means you found a woman alone in a chicken coop and didn't pretend you didn't see her." She crossed her arms. "That's not nothing." Susan stayed for a week. In the last 2 days, she and Mr. Arthur talked more, first with the careful tone of 2 strangers sizing each other up to see if they can trust one another, then with the ease of people who've discovered they have some things in common. They had both raised a child without the partnership they'd expected. They both knew what it was like to stay standing when the ground gives out. On the morning before she left, Susan was in the kitchen with Mia while the coffee heated up. "Do you want me to stay?" her mother asked. Mia thought before answering. "I want us to not be far apart like this, Mom. The rest we'll figure out." Susan nodded, stirred the coffee. "That man is good," she said, referring to Mr. Arthur. "He is," Mia agreed. "The kind you don't come across often. You really don't." When the land was finally sold, Mr. Arthur called Mia in for a serious talk. He had a proposal. The money from the sale had been better than expected, and he wanted to use part of it to renovate a room in the back of the property, a room that had been closed for years, that he hadn't known quite what to do with, but now he knew. "It would be yours," he said. "A space for you and Caleb, with a separate entrance all proper. It's not staying in someone's house as a favor, it's having a place of your own." Mia just looked at him. "Why?" she asked. "Because you helped me with what I didn't know how to do alone, and because Caleb already knows the path to the garden by heart, and it would be a shame for him to lose that." She laughed, a small laugh, coming from that place where things still hurt a little, but are already healing. "And because," he continued more slowly, "my Martha would have loved having you here. She liked new people. She used to say that new people bring new stories, and that new stories make life last longer. The room was renovated. It took 3 months with Mr. Arthur right in the middle of the work, the way a countryman gets, giving his opinion, doing what he knows, trying to help where he doesn't. When it was finished, it was small, but well made. It had a little window that looked out onto the same vegetable garden as the other window of the house, as if, one way or another, everything led back to that garden Martha had planted, and that kept growing. Mia put the 2 changes of clothes she still had in the bedroom dresser, now truly hers, and sat alone on the edge of the bed for a moment. Caleb was sleeping in the crib that Mr. Arthur had asked Diane to buy on a trip. Outside, you could hear the chickens, and you could hear, softly, Mr. Arthur humming in the vegetable garden. The end of the story. There are stories that begin in the most unlikely place you can imagine. In a chicken coop, on an afternoon of sheer exhaustion, with a cloth bag on your lap and less than $70 inside a crumpled envelope. And when we hear these stories, we think, no, it can't be like that. Things don't happen like that, but they do. What touches me about this story is not the beginning or the end, it's the middle. That moment when a man in a straw hat found a young woman sitting in the straw among the chickens and had to choose between pretending he hadn't seen her or stopping, and he stopped, without knowing what would come next. With no guarantee whatsoever, he simply stopped. And sometimes that's all it is. Sometimes a whole life changes because someone stopped when they could have kept going. Tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. What would you have done in Mr. Arthur's place? Leave it in the comments. I read every one of your words with care. Thank you so much for being here. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next stories.